Hello, welcome. Thank you to everyone who is joining us today. We're going to get started now. Good afternoon and welcome to today's program on perspectives on business and travel in the COVID-19 era. I'm Karin Zissas. I'm the editor-in-chief of ASCOA Online, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you today. I'm speaking to you from Mexico City. It's actually a holiday here. Thank you. And I know we've got a few people here celebrating as well. Thank you for everyone for taking the time to join. We have a great panel lined up to discuss the challenges and opportunities the travel industry is facing amid this pandemic, including perspectives from the air travel and hotel sectors. We would like to thank our sponsors, Chevron, Greenberg Traurig, and Microsoft. And we'd like to remind everyone to keep yourselves on mute throughout the program to avoid any interference. Toward the end of the session, we will open the room for a very brief Q&A from the audience. So please send your questions to fmartinez@as-coa.org, or you can scroll over your name in participants to ask a question and raise your hand. Francisco will add you to our queue. We want to remind everyone joining us today that this is an on-the-record public program. It's also being streamed live through various social media channels and on live stream. So this is an on-the-record public program. So without further ado, I would like to get started because we really have, as we say, a panel de lujo today. And we will start to welcome the stellar lineup of speakers who will be bringing us decades of experience in the airline and hotel industry. We've got Pilar Arizmendi Stewart. She's the VP of Sales and Marketing for the Americas from Palladium Hotel Group. We've got Luciano Macagno. He's the Managing Director for Latin America, the Caribbean, and South Florida from Delta Airlines. And we also have with us Peter Cerda. He is the Regional Vice President for the Americas for the International Air Transport Association, IATA. So we will begin with some initial remarks from each guest and then move on to a moderated conversation, leave about 10 to 15 minutes towards the end for questions from the audience. I want to start off with Pilar, if you would like to begin. How has the pandemic been impacting the Palladium Hotel Group and the destinations where you've been operating? What have been some of the biggest challenges? If you could tell us a little bit about how the situation's evolved back since February or March when this all started. Thank you, Pilar.
Thank you, Karin, and thank you, the American Society and Council of the Americas, for inviting us to have this conversation. I'm very happy to be here. To start with, I was in Madrid attending Fitur in January when I heard about COVID-19 for the very first time, and boy, we were far from believing what was about to happen to us, right? Before we start, I would like to share with you some information about us to tell you a little bit who we are and give you some data so we can put everything in perspective. Palladium Hotel Group is the 7th largest Spanish hotel company, all-inclusive hotel company in the world. We have hotels in Mexico, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Brazil, Italy, and of course, Spain. One of our core values is entertainment, and in Ibiza we are kings. We are the home of the best DJs in the world, and as you can see, we live from people. We live from having those big crowds in concerts and in our hotels. So we have a big challenge here with COVID-19. Speaking about our hotels, we have 50 properties with more than 17,000 employees around the world. Close to 20,000 rooms available. Rooms we aim to fill every single day. Can you imagine that? It is just crazy. 7,300 rooms of those rooms are in the Americas. For our hotels in Americas, talking about business and how it is the share, 55% of our business comes from the US, 20% from Canada, another 20% from Mexico and Latin America, and 5% from Asia. As you can see, we depend a lot from the American traveler to fill these rooms. And I could say also, I can share that our occupancy before COVID-19 was 80%, in the 80s.
Is that, great. Thank you. We're going to move on. Thank you for those introductory remarks, Pilar. We're going to move on now to Luciano. How has the COVID-19 impacted Delta Airlines and its business operations? What have been some of the challenges you've been facing? A lot of people are debating whether or not to go back to the airport and get back to traveling. We'd love to hear what your experience has been.
Well, thank you, Karen, and thank you to the council and to fellow panelists, and of course, welcome to this amazing audience. It's always an honor to join the Council of the Americas. I normally, in particular throughout this pandemic, I'm a frequent participant of the many topics the council has covered, mostly on the other side. This time I get to be on this side, and so it's an honor, even a privilege, to be able to share with this audience Delta's perspective on what I consider an interesting topic, and one that I risk to say we're all very passionate about, and I will also risk to say we all miss these days, which is travel. So going back a little bit into February of this year, I was thinking about this as Pilar was reminding us where she was in March. Back in February, we were celebrating our largest profit sharing ever, close to $2 billion distributed among our 85,000 employees, celebrating coming off of the best year ever in almost 100-year history from a financial, customer, product, across every single perspective. Every metric was record high. Fast forward 1 month into this crisis that we've all been going through, and to get the facts straight, it's no secret that this pandemic has brought change to all of us, personally and professionally. And of course, no surprise that in times in which staying at home is what we're all recommended to do, air travel is, of course, as a result of that, going through unprecedented challenges. So a lot has changed for us from February to today, in particular throughout these past few months. But as I like to say, and anyone who's close to this industry knows, it's a resilient industry. We all know that. This is a resilient company I have the privilege of working for. And while I won't say we're ready for this, I will say that this is definitely something we're going to come out of stronger. Having said that, we're confident about the outlook. Our product, we believe, is an essential one. We have an internal saying that no one better connects the world. And while COVID hit us right in the middle of that, it's only a matter of time, I believe, until humanity is fully back on its feet to a new normal, or to what normal has been in many ways, or whatever we want to call it. But I don't know of any other time, certainly not in my lifetime, that has brought the brightest minds together to focus on a single goal around the globe, which is finding a solve to this pandemic, right? So I have no doubt about that this too shall pass. In the meantime, I will say that we're flying roughly a third of our customers that we were flying a year ago. So these are challenging times from that perspective. No news to anyone here. Good news is that we are seeing steady increments week over week. And as we work closely with some of the largest corporations that partner with us, our customers, of course, to understand what their outlook looks like, I can confirm, I can tell you that week over week, they get more and more eager to fly. And as much as I love being on this webinar, and as much as we all find the convenience and perhaps even enjoy having this virtual life, I know for a fact that the success in all this takes for granted the relationships and the trust that we've built over so many years, and we can only do so much of this. So I'm very confident and I can guarantee that travel will continue to be essential for both business and for pleasure. That is our purpose, and that's what we're set out to rebuild. But yes, we know it will take time. Latin America, which is my scope of my business, and like many of yours, has, of course, a complexity of its own. You know that regardless of the business you're in this region, and including Central America and the Caribbean, Delta, we fly to over 30 countries. That means that even before we go into discussing demand softness and any other topic that is affecting the rest of the world, that means that for us in this region, we're dealing with 30 different governments, dealing with the pandemic, which are dealing with the pandemic in 30 different ways, with all the infrastructure and regulatory complexity that comes with that. So as a result of that, we've been working closely through IATA, of course, and with each of the governments, handling travel restrictions as well as we can. And we're now flying into most of the Caribbean, which given its leisure nature, is responding quicker than perhaps other markets. We're in the process of rebuilding our Central America network as we speak, and perhaps a step behind, but also working how we return to South America, where we've been operating for decades, and currently we have a very limited service, essentially flying into Sao Paulo, and that's about it. But I'll let Peter go deeper into that complexity, which of course he masters. Let's talk a little bit about safety and travel. No question about it. Safety for us today is our number one. Safety has always been our number one commitment, but today is our number one focus. And as we navigate through these difficult financial times for the industry and for our airline, I can promise you that nothing is being spared when it comes to doing what is right to take care of our people and our customers, and being very vocal about what we're doing in that regard. The measures we've taken over these past months to guarantee travel is safe, from testing all of our employees to mask wearing to blocking middle seats to capping load factors, cleaning procedures, which by the way go beyond our aircrafts and also include our partnerships with TSA, airports, and Mayo Clinic and CDC with whom we have partnerships. But I can go deeper into that later if you'd like. It's not only about what we do. In reality, it's also about the level of comfort that you all have in traveling, that we all have in traveling. And that does not come in a day. We know that. But I can promise you we're taking all measures to reinstate that confidence in travel. Going for a second back into March when this all started, our CEO, Ed Bastian, made it clear that we were to focus on three things: always keeping people over profits, which is protecting our employees, protecting our customers, and protecting our future. So in regards to protecting our employees, we've done more testing than anybody across our frontline and all of our employee groups, making mask wearing mandatory. And with all of our measures, our infection rates within our company are well below the national average. In regard to protecting our customers, we have a culture of listening, acting, and listening. We're constantly shaping the business around our customers' needs. And one thing I can say is that our NPS, our Net Promoter Scores today, are as high as they've ever been. They're actually higher than they've ever been by like 30 points. We've gone from the 40, 50 to the 70s in terms of Net Promoter Score, which is a tribute to everything that we're doing. And it's our customers telling us that we're focusing on the right things. In regards to protecting our future, we're not going to jeopardize 100 years of a brand trajectory like ours and leading the path like we were before. So we're really focusing on the right things, and we don't, this too shall pass. So we're focusing much more on safety, and we're focusing much more on our brand and the trust and loyalty from our customers than in short-term revenue generation. That's a little bit of what we're seeing as our path, as our situation today and our path forward. And like I said, this too will pass, and we're confident that we'll come out stronger as an industry and certainly as a company.
Thank you very much, Luciano. I want to move on to Peter. We know that COVID-19 has really impacted the air travel industry. I mean, Luciano was just talking about it. This is really crucial to the economy of the Americas, given that it drives nearly $958 billion in GDP and generates 12.8 million jobs in the Americas region. So can you talk a little bit about how the situation is involved and what you're seeing? Thank you.
Thanks very much. And since my two colleagues on the panel gave important dates of what they experienced with COVID, for me, March 5th was the last time I was on an airplane. That is a long time for me to be on the ground and not in the air, where I usually spend most of my time is on an airplane. But these are certainly changing times for all of us. And, I could just put it in one phrase: aviation is in survival mode. This is an industry that in the past has gone through many different crises. We've, as Luciana has said, will come out stronger, no doubt about it. But the industry is going to have to reinvent itself, change, modify to a changing environment. Certainly, the COVID has had a devastating effect on the industry over the last 6 months. In most cases today, many of our borders in Latin America remain closed or slowly beginning to open. Those countries that are opening either are implementing a sort of quarantine measure or requiring testing. So these are not one day we're closed, now we're open for business. We're open for business, but with certain levels of restrictions or responsibilities that passengers will have to go. For those of us that are based here in the US, probably never before in our history have we felt so left out of many countries, because we can't go into many countries if you're a US citizen because of what the high rate of COVID cases are. The same thing for many Latin Americans cannot go into many places around the world because of the restrictions. If you look at the Americas right now, only Canada and Uruguay have full clearance or their citizens can go into the European community without any sort of restrictions. So that's quite telling. A country like the US is limited. If you're a US citizen and you want to go to Costa Rica today, it depends what state you live in that you're going to be permitted to go in. So very much changing times. The industry is at a crossroad. The industry this year is expected to lose about $84 billion collectively on a global basis. Last year, we made $34 billion in profit. The North American carriers are expected to lose about $23 billion. Last year, US carriers made $17 billion. And when we look at Latin America, it's even a more challenging situation. Many of you here today listening to us, you can attest to it. If COVID has been devastating to the region, it's only the cherry on the cake. We have to remember our region has been going through some challenging periods of time. Last year, or right prior to COVID, we had social unrest in many of our countries like Peru, Chile. We have an economic crisis in Argentina. We have a political, let's say, crisis in Brazil, in Mexico, and then we have the natural disasters. So you want the perfect scenario where it's never a boring day, come to Latin America. But that's what makes it so dynamic. Even with all those challenges, never in our history have we had better connectivity than we have today. But the challenge is certainly there. Today, we have several of our airlines based in the region. Our largest ones, our most important ones, the ones that provide the greatest amount of connectivity are in Chapter 11. They've had to restructure themselves. We had a few airlines like TAME of Ecuador or LATAM Argentina that have decided to stop operations altogether. So regardless if you're reorganizing or you've ceased operation, or you're an airline that has decided to reduce your capacity into the region, there is going to be an impact. And certainly we're looking at governments for their leadership, for their guidance, to really step up to the plate like never before. The recovery, I wish I had better news. We are not expecting international recovery of the industry into 2024. We're looking for domestic recovery sometime around 2023. When we look at the Americas, or we look more precisely in Latin America, what we're expecting is family and friend travel to return sooner rather than later. It will be faster than corporate travel. We expect intra-regional travel also to come back before the corporate travel. So it certainly is going to be a period of time of transition. It's going to be not only how do we adapt to COVID, how do we restart, but how do we acclimate to the changing environment that we're seeing in our region over the next couple of years. So particularly on the social, economic, and political side. And obviously for those of you who are based in South Florida, that has huge implications as well because of the strong ties with the region. If you look at, just put in perspective, in the month of April, 80% of scheduled flights around the world were on the ground. So only 20% of flights were actually flying in April. If you look at Latin America, 94% of our scheduled flights were on the ground. Throughout the entire COVID crisis, we've only had 3 countries that have maintained their borders, domestic and international flights operating. That's Mexico, Brazil, and Chile. But even in the case of Chile, you have to be a Chilean citizen to be able to go into the country or a resident. So there's restrictions in order to be able to fly. So just because you have operations doesn't mean you have liberties of going into those markets. Mexico really has been the only market that has remained without, let's call it some sort of quarantine testing or barriers in place. Now, I've given you a lot of bad news. There is good news. There is good news, and Luciano attested to it. Never in our history before has this industry been safer to travel in today. It's always been a safe industry, and year over year, from an accident standpoint, it has become even safer. But COVID has required us to look at another level of safety, passenger safety, biosafety. And today, traveling is more safer. It's probably safer to be on an airplane than it is to be at your local convenience store or standing online to the bank. With all the protocols that have been put in place, the industry within 2 months was able to implement biosafety protocols for air transportation. And when I talk about air transportation, airports, airlines, and also passengers, because passengers today will have a very different experience and a very different responsibility in terms of how they travel. And that's going to be also quite changing in the mindset in terms of how we bring back the confidence back. And I think that's something we'll talk about is confidence. But from a perspective of biosafety protocol, all countries have these protocols in place. The industry is ready to restart. The industry is ready to restart in a responsible manner, ensuring that passengers' safety is always at the forefront, and that we're able to do it in a way that air transport will not be a vector of spreading COVID-19. Since the COVID crisis or pandemic started, we've had over 1 billion passengers that we've been monitoring that have traveled, over 1 million flights. In all those number of flights, in all those billions of passengers, we only have 30 cases that somehow are related or cannot be confirmed that those passengers became ill on board an airplane. So when you talk about 1 billion passengers, 1 million flights, and 30 cases which cannot be scientifically attributed, but there's a possibility around, that is a huge, huge reassurance to the industry and to the public confidence that traveling is safe. Today, as Luciano has indicated, passengers have responsibility. They'll have to make sure before they even get to the airport that they're fit to travel, that they're not sick. They'll have to maintain or comply with certain requirements, like the mask and so on. So there is a need today, I think more than ever before, for public-private collaboration. That is what's going to get travel and tourism back on the board. That's what's going to help us with the economic recovery moving forward over the next couple of years. Particularly in Latin America, where governments have seen air travel or travel and tourism as an easy cash cow, it's the time for governments to work with the private sector with the goal of making travel more affordable, more competitive, and where we can continue to increase and compete. Because one thing is for sure, Argentina is not competing with Brazil. Chile is not competing with Peru anymore. The region is not competing on a global scale because you're going to have much less people traveling, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. And travelers are going to be very select and want to travel to places where they feel safe. And that's why in ending, the public-private sector collaboration is going to be essential.
Karen, and if I may, I can tell you that COVID-19 has not been different for us. In our case, we have been obligated to close all our hotels in February and March. Since then, we have been through a roller coaster of challenges, of course. But just as Peter and Luciano were saying, there is no doubt we all are redefining the travel experience. And Palladium Hotel Group, of course, is not the exception. I can assure you that we are giving a lot. We are giving it all to rebuild the travel industry and bringing back travelers to our destinations. In our case, we have been very proactive as well. From the very beginning, we immediately created a task force around the world to develop and implement new standards and protocols. This crisis has taught us that the most important thing for a traveler right now is the reassurance of safety and the security of the travel experience. Those words, safety and flexibility, are probably the most important items the consumer is looking for or considering before booking a vacation. This situation has given us, in essence, the opportunity to learn, to evolve, and to reinvent ourselves. It is the best we can do it if we want to survive this crisis. After all, we are constantly analyzing the market and the consumer's behavior. And just as many of you, we have attended hundreds of educational webinars. And when you were asking where do we stand today, I can tell you that we are very happy to inform to everybody that we have reopened our hotels. We have started reopening our hotels in July. We reopened Costa Mujeres in Cancun. And Puerto Vallarta, as well in Mexico, we have reopened Jamaica and Brazil. And in a couple of weeks, we will be reopening the Riviera Maya in Mexico. And the Dominican Republic will be reopened in November. With that said, in other words, we will be basically, God willing, have all the hotels reopened before the Thanksgiving this year. And talking about a little bit about our business on the books for these months, because I guess everybody may be interested in learning how we are doing. The occupancy that we are running is between 38 to 55% during these months, and during Christmas we are expecting or forecasting a 65% occupancy, more or less. So as you can see, the business is slowly coming back. I think it is a matter of time. We're seeing some business or some bookings for 2020, 22, and even for 2023. I was taking some quotes for some groups last night for 2023. So I think we will recover from this one, as Peter and Luciano were saying.
Thank you so much, Pilar. That's a great perspective. We're going to start going into a moderated discussion. I just want to remind everyone to keep their connections on mute if you're not talking or asking a question. And one of the things that was great with all of you was to hear about your experiences from the beginning up until now. And we know that a lot has changed as we've learned more about this pandemic. At the beginning, it was sort of, you didn't want to open the door in the supermarket. You didn't want to touch anything. And now we've got a lot more information about this pandemic. Luciano, I wanted to start with you. What are some things that you're seeing in terms of precautions that are being taken by Delta in order to ensure customer safety? Maybe a little bit about how that's even changed over the past 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you for the question. This has definitely been our number one priority these months, and I'm happy to elaborate on it. But if I had to just summarize in one phrase, I'll quote Peter Sarda when he said, "It's safer to be in an aircraft than to be in a convenience store." That's definitely the case, and I will advocate for that as I share with you everything that we have done over this past few months. First off, if you haven't traveled since March, and I assume most of you haven't, I can tell you that it's a completely different story. Of course, the basics are still there, but the level of care built around the experience, and again, as Peter was alluding to, in light of what we're all prioritizing today, which is our safety in times of the pandemic, is completely unprecedented. As you walk into so picture yourself on your upcoming travel, and as you walk into the airport, in many ways, you will feel like your local supermarket or convenience store, as you will be required to wear a mask. There'll be plexiglass shields at check-in and in any other area in which you're in contact with an agent or with a customer service agent. There's going to be intensified cleaning all across airport facilities with technology that I'll go into in a second. We've introduced, for example, in our main hubs, and we've just launched this last week in partnership with TSA, because as I mentioned at the beginning, this goes beyond just being on the aircraft. It's really throughout the entire travel experience. We've introduced antimicrobial bins for the safety checkpoints. This is really technology that has always existed, right? It's material for these bins where microbes and bacteria cannot stick to that. Essentially, they can't live there, not even for a second. This, again, is technology that existed, but it had not been put at use by this industry because, frankly, there was a need to. And that's part of our efforts and what we call today our Delta Care Standards. That we've started in Atlanta last week, and it's being rolled out into all of our main hubs, and from there it will be rolled out to other airports as well. You'll also find all across the airport and terminal hand sanitizing stations, because we all know that throughout the different touch points we want to keep our hands clean. Sky hubs, you'll find sky hubs open and with more space between sitting areas. You'll see a difference in the meals. It's going to be pre-packed food instead of that help yourself food, just to keep matters safer. Once you reach the gate, boarding process will be different. We're now boarding from back to front. We've been doing this for a few months now. Interesting thing is that this is a process that was suggested to us by a flight attendant as she was observing how we were boarding and how people were hesitant about boarding, and you have those first class cabin perhaps boarding first, and then suddenly you have 100 people just walking right by them, right? And essentially perhaps rubbing shoulder to shoulder with them. So they suggested, why don't we board back to front? And that has had a great impact in our customer feedback. So we're doing that all across our system. We're also boarding in small groups, of course, to encourage to facilitate social distancing, and with social distance indications and markings all along the way in the line, of course, within the jet bridge in groups of 10 people. Inside the aircraft, sanitation is a completely different story. Our turnaround times, of course, are longer than they were because we're investing a lot more time in cleaning, and not just cleaning, but truly sanitizing, which is the true upgrade in what we're doing now. You can rest assured that any aircraft you walk into, of course, speaking on behalf of Delta, will have gone through a complete sanitation process, which falls into 3 steps, right? It starts with a traditional cleaning. It's a cleaning crew that goes inside the aircraft, does the traditional physical cleaning and wiping down the entire aircraft, of course, incorporating now further sanitizing measures as they wipe down the entire aircraft. Then that crew opens all the bins, all the arm trays, all the trays, everything that all the window shields. They open up everything, they wipe everything down, they leave the aircraft. And step number 2 is a special crew with specialized technology and equipment goes in with what is called electrostatic sanitation. This is technology that is the same that is used to turn around hospital rooms and ICU rooms, because it effectively sanitizes everything at its reach. So we sanitize the entire aircraft using these electrostatic spray guns. Then our cleaning crew comes in again with his next step and once again wipes down the entire aircraft. These are all steps that were not included in our cleaning processes in the past because we were more focused on cleaning and not as much sanitation. So with this, we've eliminated essentially any risk of any type of anything that might have been in the aircraft. And alluding to Peter's point, not that we've seen any, but just to keep matters safe, we essentially sanitize the entire aircraft. And most importantly, the final step in this process is that the same flight attendants that will be traveling with the customers on that flight that's about to take off, they do an inspection throughout the entire aircraft, and they're the ones that give the green light to board the aircraft. And if for any reason they feel that cleanliness or sanitation is not to the level of Delta Care standards, they're completely entitled to call in that crew once again, even if that means delaying an aircraft. They're the ones that give the green light, because remember, they're also traveling within that aircraft with the same passengers. On top of that, once you're in your flight and once you're in your journey, no matter if you're traveling domestic or internationally, you're not going to have anybody sitting next to you. We have made a commitment of capping the amount of passengers that we have on our flights, and we're blocking all middle seats. This essentially means that no matter where in the aircraft you seat, there will be nobody sitting next to you. There will be an empty seat. There will be an aisle, or there will be a window next to you, but you will not be sitting next to anyone. That's a commitment we've made until early January. We will then revise it. Frankly, that will be decided based on the feedback of our customers in regards to their level of comfort. All customers and crew must wear a mask throughout the entire journey, and for 99.5% of the cases I've been asked this, we have not had any issue with that. Everybody is very careful about taking care of themselves and the people around them, so we really haven't seen. It's just been a handful of issues in millions and millions of customers, so that's going very smoothly. The air quality inside the aircrafts is also, and I can confirm, is hospital grade air. It's better than the air you will breathe anywhere else. It's better than the air you're breathing at this precise moment, unless you're watching us from aboard an aircraft. The air that you will breathe inside an aircraft is better than the air you're breathing right now. And that's a byproduct really of the HEPA filters, high efficiency filters that we have on all of our aircrafts, which, by the way, we rotate and replace with double the cadence that are recommended by the manufacturers. And it's really the air gets completely recirculated with outside air between 2 and 4 minutes. So it's very safe to be on the aircraft at all times and throughout the entire journey. This is what we call our Delta Care standards. We've even gone to the level of creating an entire business unit division that mandates and that governs over our cleanliness and sanitation, and it works very close with our partnership with CDC and Mayo Clinic. I think we're probably the only airline in the world that actually has a vice president of cleanliness. That we actually have that position within our company. We created that in these past few months because, like I said, safety is our number one priority. So feedback from our customers and all this has been the best. Our NPS scores are record high, really, and The only thing that I can say, I've traveled multiple times between March and now. I didn't travel the first couple of months. I stayed home. Then I began travel. I traveled on my own for business, for pleasure. My wife has traveled. I've traveled with my kids. And really, maybe it's that first flight where it feels kind of awkward to have a mask on for multiple hours. Once you get used to that and you do get past that, it's really a fantastic experience. So that's a little bit, Karen, of what we've been doing. We continue to revisit these processes. And like I said, we work in close partnership with Mayo Clinic. So as new technology and new clinically proved measures come into play with everything that's being studied around the world, through them, we of course immediately assess in terms of incorporating into our processes.
It's pretty incredible to hear all of the steps that one has to go through to ensure the cleanliness and disinfection of one flight, right? But then you also have to actually get there. You have to get to your destination. So my next question is for Peter. I know you've been talking about, you talked a little bit in the opening about working with government, and many governments have closed their borders, shut down their airlines. How do you work with all of these different governments? You suggested that we're talking about all different types of scenarios. How do you work with governments to talk about this process of reopening borders?
It's been a challenge. Patience, lots of patience. Look, I think one of the things that we've tried to do as a trade organization with governments, particularly in Latin America, is that the situation is continuously changing. And when we look at Latin America, the situation has been really devastating. When we look at, I hear there's a noise somewhere. Oh, okay, it just went away. Don't know where it went. When you look at Latin America, border closures and government intervention took place in the latter part of March, when the pandemic really hadn't hit us yet in the region. It was at a very serious point in Europe, in Asia, but the governments took a really aggressive stance at that point to safeguard the social well-being of their citizens. And at that time, we were very supportive of the government. We were helping with repatriation flights. We were trying to create protocols. But now we're 6 months into this pandemic, and most of our countries are now beginning to slowly open restrictions. The challenge has been is, where is the balance between the economic recovery and kind of getting back into normal life, if we can call it that, a balanced approach, and where do we safeguard the well-being of our citizens? One thing that's a fact, and I think we all acknowledge, and Luciana mentioned it, until we have a vaccine for the pandemic, we have to learn how to coexist. If you want to travel, you're going to have to learn, you're going to have to wear a mask. And once you do it, when you do it the first time, it's going to be somewhat uncomfortable. But once you get over it, it's pretty okay. The same thing going to the supermarket and so on. The challenge with governments in the region to restart, one has been, let's not make the same mistakes we did with 9/11. Let's not implement procedures that are going to deter or not help instead of helping. Today, we still suffer from the 9/11 procedures that were implemented to safeguard security. It is very, very ineffective in many cases in terms of how we travel, depending where you are in one part of the world and the other. What has happened in Latin America, and you see it, some countries have opened their borders quicker than others. Some have implemented quarantines. Others have implemented testing. And this is the challenge. When we're trying to restart the market, when we're trying to bring confidence back to the traveling public, we have a mix of different types of protocols and requirements that are being mandated. So when you open a country and you implement with quarantine, where that passenger is going to have to quarantine for 2 weeks, you're basically not opening the country. And that's what happened to us in Ecuador, where the first week, those who needed to get back to Ecuador went back to Ecuador. But the next 3 weeks, no one wanted to go, because no one was going to go into a country in quarantine for 2 weeks. It happened to us in Spain with when the summer fast approached and the government in Spain opened its borders and its market. The British government, a few weeks after, started putting quarantines into those British citizens that went into Spain coming back. What happened in Spain, 90% of travel between the UK and Spain just was disseminated, just went out. So what's the challenge? It's convincing governments that air transport is safe, is acting responsible, and we will not be a vector of contaminating passengers or their citizens in the country. That has been very difficult because a lot of it is, unfortunately, it's very political. And we've seen this in places like Colombia, where the central government basically gave the authority to the municipalities to decide when they open their airports. Well, it makes it very challenging for the air travel sector to restart when you have to get approval by 2 cities to open connectivity. Then you go to Argentina, for example, that has been locked down for almost 7 months, and we don't have clarity on when the market's going to reopen. So the industry cannot sell tickets, cannot give some sort of forecasting to their customers as when will I be back in the market. And I think that's been the short-sightedness of our governments in the region. Air travel in our region is not a luxury. When you look at Latin America, air travel is a necessity. Air travel is not the same as it is in Europe or in North America. In Europe and North America, you have high rail, you have massive highway systems. We don't have that in Latin America. So the way to get within one country from one city to another, it's either 17 hours on a bus or 1 hour on an airplane. What has happened in our countries is the bus systems are back in service. They were back in service much quicker than the air transport system was. And when we kind of challenged, well, what kind of protocols is the bus system using compared to what air transportation is using? It was very different. Or what's, from Pilar's standpoint, what are hotels doing? I can guarantee you everything that's been done in travel and tourism has been far and above what some other sectors have done. And it's not to criticize other sectors, but we should not have been put in a place where we're now in mid-September and we have countries like Argentina still shut down. Colombia restarted domestic service only 2 weeks ago, will now start international next week. And these are major countries with major economies where air transport is really very, very dependent. So that has been somewhat of the frustration in all of this, Karen. It's convincing government, making them understand this is not an industry of the rich. This is not about giving money, free money to airlines to make them survive these bad airlines. No, if an Avianca or a LATAM disappear from our market, that's hundreds of thousands of jobs. And let's not even think about the traveling public. In our region that is so dependent on air travel, think about all those families and businesses that export fruits, meats, manufactured goods that are produced in Latin America and they are sent all around the world. It's done by air transport. So that's why it's so important to make sure that air travel can come back strong, safe, but quickly. And 6 months, with lockdown, that has been really, and that's why, I go back to my opening remarks. We're in survival mode because, and Luciano can attest to this, like every other region. And those folks who are listening to us, regardless of what country you're in, air travel will not be the same as it was before COVID. Mm-hmm. Copa Airlines will be 60% of what it was before COVID. Copa Airlines is probably one of the best airlines in terms of connectivity. Iberia, Lufthansa will not be coming with their 14 frequencies to Mexico City. It just won't happen at the beginning. Qatar, Emirates are leaving the markets of Chile and Santiago. So it's going to be very different. And this is why I said at the beginning, the private-public cooperation is going to be needed more than ever before. But this is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for governments really to change their mindset in how they treat travel and tourism. And I think if they do that in a proactive way, if they see us as a strategic partner, this region has a huge amount of potential moving forward. And the recuperation recovery will be much quicker.
Great. We are quickly running through our time, and we've been talking about air travel. Once people get to their destination, they have to have a place to stay. So I want to hear from Pilar, because something that Peter just said is fascinating. You get to a location, and then you've got to quarantine for a certain amount of time. Pilar, can you talk a little bit about the process of reopening hotels, what you're looking at going forward in terms of reopening hotels and assuring people that are coming to stay with you that it's safe? Pilar? Pilar, you might have to unmute.
Yes, I was muted. So yes, let me share a little bit about our health and safety protocols. And before I start, please know that I will be more than happy to share the links to our well-being information that we have on the website. In case anybody is interested, I will share it with you guys so you can share it with the audience. But we have implemented impressive health and safety protocols, which are certified by SGS, a worldwide leading inspection company recognized as a global benchmark for quality and integrity. And we are also certified by the World Travel Tourism Council. To give you some examples of what we are doing, obviously we're checking the temperature of our guests, our employees. Our employees go through a big process before entering the hotel. They are every 2 weeks. We are testing them to prove whether they have COVID-19 or not. One thing that is key for us that we are doing, we are having a complete disinfection of the rooms. Rooms are not occupied for 24 to 48 hours after the last check-in. Of course, hand sanitizer is everywhere. Masks and gloves and disposable paper are mandatory for our staff. Guests need to wear masks while walking around, but when they are sitting or when they are by the beach or by the pool, they are allowed to remove the mask. We have enhanced our medical service. Now we have them 24/7. We are prioritizing the use of single-use products. We're disinfecting constantly every service. After every other service of the restaurants, we are sanitizing that. Social distancing, of course, is very important. And in our case, the importance of density is very, very important. Our hotels are big, and maybe it could be like scary for some people traveling and saying, oh, wow, I'm staying at this hotel with 1,000 rooms. Yes, it's 1,000 rooms, but the layout where we are or the way our hotels are designed are basically open. We have a lot of gardens, a lot of open areas where the people can stay. Obviously, when you are indoors, we are asking you to wear masks and to follow the protocols. We have also changed the concept that we have in food and beverage. We have changed food safety is constant review, and we're adapting it constantly. Our operating procedures. We're encouraging reservations of our areas like the restaurants, the spa, the gym, etc. So we are always providing the service to all our guests. We have established maximum capacity. We now have assisted buffets in a way that, yes, we will have the buffet, but we will have a cook serving you. We also, something very important that we have done, we have changed all the material in the rooms are now all the paper, the menu, and everything. Now everything is digital. That is one of our core values: technology and innovation. So we have changed everything in the rooms, and whatever you need, you will find it in our local channel. You will be able to order your food, to order your transportation, or to see what is going on in the room. And I was telling you before that innovation and technology is a priority for us and one of our core values. We are doing the mist disinfection system. We have it, and we're purifying the air. We also have online check-in and check-out. We have implemented, there are 5 rooms that we have for isolation in case we have any emergency in our rooms, in our hotels. And of course, I was telling the other day to one of my friends, when we started with COVID-19, our manual was like 22 pages. Now it's like close to 200 pages with all the changes that we are constantly implementing. And in addition to that, we have launched our Stay Safe Plus program. This is a new medical care insurance completely free of charge for our guests staying at any of our properties in the world. This insurance, besides reinforcing our commitment to the guest wellness, of course, is protecting them against any unforeseen circumstances that they may have in the event they are diagnosed with COVID-19. And this is, for us, this is honestly an industry-leading initiative that we're doing precisely to boost the travel experience and the travel confidence to our properties. This insurance is a peace of mind for our guests, and it covers up to $120,000 in the case a guest is tested with positive COVID-19 while vacationing with us. As you can see, we're doing everything possible to regain the traveler's confidence.
That's great. Thank you very much, Pilar, for that overview. As I said, we've gone really quickly through our time, and I want to open it up to Q&A. I know that we have a question from Ana of the IFC. If you can unmute your connection and go ahead and ask the question, Ana.
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. The first question, because I have two more after hearing all of you and all of your experience. First of all, is to Luciano. I would like to understand how Delta will deal with this space between seats, right? So considering that an airline depends on selling seats to have profit, deciding that having an empty seat between seats, how it will impact your profit, and how are you imagine to deal with it? The second quick question would be to Peter. How can you measure the impact on tourism and travel for the Caribbean? And you mentioned a lot private and public cooperation. So do you have any tips on how this could be done? And to Pilar, it would be nice to know how you're thinking about tackling environmental issues. You mentioned that many of the objects that you are using on the hotels are only one use. So have you thought about something related to sustainability procedures? Thank you.
Yes. So, Karen, I guess, Luciano, you will start first. You're muted.
Luciano,
Yeah, sorry, I didn't notice I was on mute. I was saying I'll start with the first question. I'll try to be brief so that we can leave enough time for all three responses. I'll tell you that, of course, while it is financially not the best thing to do to block 40% of your seats, you're potentially leaving 40% of your revenue on the table. That's not what we're concerned about today. Today, our number one focus is reinstating travel confidence. There's a long list of things we're doing to make sure that our cash positions stay as strong as possible, and we burn the least amount of cash, and we go into cash neutral, positive as soon as we can. But none of those will be put at spare if they affect in any way either travel safety or travel confidence. I will say that the middle seat, so far we've committed to leaving that open until January, and we're much more focused on the long-term benefit of reinstating travel confidence and the short-term impact on revenue. I will tell you, we have no reason to believe that it's unsafe in any way to fly, like to occupy all seats when compared to leaving the middle seat open. But it is what our customers are telling us that we need to do to reinstate that travel confidence. We see it as a step into eventually someday, we're not going to fly at 60% capacity forever and ever, right? But we do see this as a first step into reinstating that travel confidence ahead of going, of course, at some point in time into our normal flight load factor. So for now, we just think it's a price that we're willing to pay, sacrifice some revenue to reinstate travel confidence.
Pilar, do you want to go ahead to answer?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be Peter. So in our case, this company, Palladium Hotel Group, is completely committed to the conservation of the planet. I can assure you that all the items that we are using are either recyclable or that we can reprocess. Well, not us, but they can be reprocessed. So we are taking very good care about that. We are being very careful about that because we are conscious that one single use can be generate a lot of garbage. But also we are committed to be looking at this at all times and making sure that all the items that we are using are also environmental carefree, I would say. So.
Peter, do you want to go ahead now?
Yeah, and look, we don't have the data for the Caribbean in terms of what the impact, but I will say the Caribbean is the most dependent touristic region in the world. So it is the region that's most dependent on air travel. Aviation supports 1.6 million jobs, almost $36 billion of GDP, 14% of that equivalent to the Caribbean. So it is a lifeline, and obviously COVID is having an impact, will have an impact. We could try and get that number for you, but the impact here is how quickly can the Caribbean recover and how quickly can we get back into providing reliable connectivity. In terms of the public cooperation, what we're seeing, this is an opportunity for our governments in the region to really change their current policies that they have with regards to travel and tourism. Travel and tourism in our region, it is very costly to come into our region, from an air transport, even from a travel and tourism, because of the high number of taxes and fees. What we see is our governments in the regions have a huge opportunity to really put legislations in place which are going to help travel and tourism prosper in the future and help connectivity. By doing this, you need to have the right regulatory framework at the right cost so the region could be competitive. And that's what we see, an opportunity for the industry to travel, to work together, to establish a work plan, a strategy, a vision where the region needs to be over the next couple of years and compete with the Middle East, Asia, and so on.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to sneak in one last question. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I'm the moderator and abuse everyone's time. This is supposed to just be an hour-long session. I understand if anyone has to go, but obviously there's so much to say and so much interest because we all so desperately want to start traveling again. One thing I would like to talk about, and Peter actually made a reference to this before, is September 11th. There's one incident that we can think back to. It might be just that we just had the anniversary, so we're all thinking about this other point in time where everything changed. Obviously, what we're seeing now is a different type of change involving health as opposed to security like before. But I'm wondering, that drastically changed travel. How do you think this compares? Do you think we will see a slower or faster return to normalcy in terms of travel this time around? And I'd like to talk about how each of you see this as the sort of historical incident. Peter, seeing as we've got you up on the screen, let's start with you. And thank you for anybody that has to drop off. Again, we're going over time a little bit here. We look forward to having more conversations on this topic, but I'll let our panelists wrap up with this thought. Go ahead, Peter.
So I think it's going to be even more impactful than 9/11 was, because now we're talking about people's health and safety. And that changes the dynamics much more, because it's just not about getting on an airplane. It's about how you prepare to travel and what your responsibilities are. And from the government standpoint is, what health public system do I have in place to bring confidence to that traveling public? So that's why I think the magnitude is much bigger. Travel will be different. The airlines have to do things differently. The industry will be doing differently. Travel and tourism will have to adapt to a new expectation that travelers have with public confidence, public safety, and let's call it a reasonable cost. But it is much more extensive than it was with 9/11. Governments have a major role here. The industry has a role, and the traveling public will have a responsibility as well.
Go ahead, Pilar.
If I can go ahead and talk about this, yes, obviously 9/11 has been one of our most recent crisis that we have had, and we have recovered from that one, right? This year we have COVID-19, and on top of that we have an election year. However, I keep telling everybody, travel is essential to people and to the economy around the world. Tourism will always play a critical role, and we know that the travel industry will come back after this pandemic. This is a slow process, we know, and in many cases we have heard companies talking about a 3 years recovery plan. I think it is about accurate, but if there is anything you can take away from this conversation, I will tell you, don't lose faith. Keep going, keep looking for opportunities, talk to people, and keep giving it all, because we will be back. I think this is the moment for us to go through these difficult times, and we know that we just go through it. Don't give up. I think this is a great opportunity for us to recover and to come back and be ready to serve our travelers.
That's a great tone to end on, Pilar. Luciano, what do you think?
Sure. So first of all, I think that this pandemic will definitely be over. Like I said in my initial remarks, we have the brightest minds in the world. We have governments, we have private, public funding. We have just all humankind focused on finding a solve. And there's no reason to believe that we won't find one. We always have, and we always will. So this will be over. Having said that, once this is over, I'm certain, I'm positive, at least at Delta, many of the things that we've learned throughout this process will stick to us and will stick to being part of our process and our travel journey. Of course, I'm not referring to masks. We're not going to wear masks forever, right? That will eventually end someday. But everything we've learned, particularly in regards to cleaning and more of the behind the scenes on sanitizing, those are things when I joked that we created a vice president and division for cleaning, I actually wasn't joking. That's true. We haven't done that for 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months. When we created our partnership with Mayo Clinic and our Delta Care standards, those are here for good. So while customers won't see much of this up front as soon as we're over this pandemic, because like I said, we're not going to be wearing masks forever and all these things. We're going to eventually go back into boarding in the way that we were, or maybe new ways, but ways that are customer-centric. We're always going to do what's right for our customers. And we believe that today, the standards of cleanliness and sanitation have been raised for good, regardless of this pandemic. And those are things that we're definitely going to stick to when this is all over.
And Karen, if you, before we finish, I think we need to talk a little bit about the opportunities. I think this is a great opportunity to empathize with the market, understand how the consumer is facing this crisis, because after all, we all are dealing with it in different ways. This is the moment for you and for us to identify your clientele and to talk to them based on their situation. In our case, we have learned that flexibility is key, and I think that is one of the things that you need to research more about your clientele, your partners, whomever you are talking to. Try to understand and to be flexible and to be accommodating to get the business. I think in these moments is when you need those partners more than ever. And as we keep saying, we will be coming out of this one as well.
Absolutely. I thank you so much. This is really interesting to learn so much about the different challenges that you guys are all facing and how you're handling it. I really do hope that we can continue this discussion and see where we are a few months from now, right? I want to thank you all for staying on a little bit longer and for taking the time to talk with us today. This was a great discussion. For anybody who missed part of this video will be available on our website very shortly after this. Thank you for everyone. Thank you to everyone for being with us today.
Thank you, Karen, the council, and to everybody who joined.